Saddle up your horses.
Pitter patter, let's get at her. It is another episode of the Manely Broncos Podcast, and we're back to our losing ways, apparently, because the Broncos lost to the Houston Texans, so the streak is over. The 5-game winning streak is over, but that's okay. The Broncos are still in the playoff hunt. It's not like the sky is falling, maybe contrary to maybe how people are feeling over there on Broncos Twitter or social media. The sky is not falling. The Broncos are still very much in the playoff hunt. And what better person to have on than a guy who spends 90% of his time, I'm exaggerating, 90% of his time covering baseball. You're probably wondering, why? But no, he is also a writer over at Predominantly Orange as well. He does talk about and write about those Denver Broncos. Of course, that is none other than Jack Ramsey. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. I appreciate you guys having me on. Excited for this first time on. Hopefully, the first of many. But let's get to it. I'm excited.
Brandon, how you doing?
What up? Feels weird doing this on Thursday. I'm not gonna lie, but I'm doing well. The truffle shuffle jinxed it. God damn it, Josh.
Yes,
Josh, it's your fault. I'm blaming you.
For anybody that doesn't know, and Jack, if you don't know, so last week, we typically have had like a lucky Matty belly rub, and Matty possibly can't make it tonight. And but last week
it's ruined anyway.
He did the truffle shuffle on top of the belly rub, and so it kind of feels like maybe that was the thing that jinxed it. With that winning streak. So if there's any sort of
Josh showed up in the chat and said Broncos country, let's truffle shuffle.
Yeah.
So naturally we had a truffle shuffle. So it's Josh's fault.
When prompted, it makes sense.
It is true because listeners do help drive this show. So therefore, if a listener, chimes in and says truffle shuffle, you got to do the truffle shuffle, and so therefore the blame falls on the listener. And so Josh, you are to blame for the
fucked up, Aaron.
So obviously, there's a lot certainly to unpack here. It was the Broncos were punched in the mouth in essence, right? I mean, they were punched in the mouth by the Houston Texans. And when I say there's a lot to unpack here, it's both the growth of the Denver Broncos and it's the growth of the Houston Texans, right? So the Broncos won 5 games. They won 5 games because of how they were playing in that 5-game winning streak to, thrust themselves into the playoff competition. But also the Houston Texans, they were doing their job. Like they were putting themselves in playoff competition to make this a playoff game, right? A playoff atmosphere. And kudos to D'Amico Ryans, CJ Stroud, and all the players that are part of the Houston Texans, because Brandon, you and I have talked about this, that if you were to tell me that the Houston Texans were going to be vying for a playoff spot, or let alone D'Amico Ryans maybe firmly, and he was probably a coach of the year candidate maybe anyway, but firmly into that playoff atmosphere and playoff competition, I never would have said that before the season. So to see that unfold, I think is nice. Yeah, so there's certainly a lot to unpack here from the Broncos side of things, but we should preface that by saying kind of how impressed we were a little bit too with maybe how good the Houston Texans really are.
Yeah, CJ Stroud looks like very legit. And as much as I agree that we were punched in the mouth, I mean, to me, that term is like an unexpected hit. I'm not saying I expected it. Like, I'm not saying I expected us to lose, but the Texans are a great team. Like, I knew this was going to be tough. This was, in all essential purposes, this was a playoff game. The thing that makes it so emotionally and mind-numbingly wrecking is this was so winnable. Like, there were so many different moments in this game that if it went the other way, we would have won. And I know, I feel like that's said a lot, and a lot of fans say that every week, even if it's not true. But At least to me, that's what it felt like from even the very first two plays where Russ throws, really the first one specifically, but Russ throws that just great, amazing ball to Courtland Sutton. Can't come down with it. It happens, I guess. Goes right back to him, another great ball. That one I don't put as much blame on Courtland as that it was a drop, but again, just can't come down with it. And that just kind of unfortunately set the tone for the rest of the game. But I mean, yeah, kudos to the Texans. I mean, CJ Stroud is a top 10 quarterback already, and I feel very comfortable saying that.
Go ahead, Jack.
Can you guys still hear me? I think my mic gave out.
No, you're good.
Okay, sweet. Well, I think it was one of those games, and I think you made the right point that first initial ball to Sutton, you kind of get that immediate feeling of, all right, I think as a sports fan, you're innately a little superstitious. Missing the immediate deep ball, first play of the game, where he has him by a step, it makes you feel a little off to start. And it felt like they got away early from what had been working for them for the last 5 games, which was set the tempo on the ground, even if it equates to a 3-and-out. Stick to your genetics, stick to what's gotten you to this point. But then the flip side to that is this was the weakest defense they have played in weeks. I mean, you have the Chiefs twice. You still have a good Bills defense despite them being banged up. You have the Vikings, another strong defense. So it's kind of the question of is it the chicken or the egg? Which one comes first? Do you adjust to the defenses you're playing, or do you stick to what's gotten you to where you are? And it feels like the Broncos picked. Well, no, and we saw it. They did pick that they adjusted to who they were playing, and a couple things, they don't break their way. When you're talking about key moments in the game, you go back to you have the beautiful deep ball to Sutton touchdown. Then I believe they force the turnover quickly after. They get the ball back, and immediately Russ gives it right back.
Yeah.
So the 3 turnovers are definitely uncharacteristic, and especially considering how Russ has been playing, how the offense has been playing as a whole, protecting the ball. And I think you got to give all the props in the world to Derek Stingley Jr.
Yeah.
Oh, that was
that second interception. I just sat there and said, "Wow." I mean, I don't really know what else there is to say at that point.
Yeah, turnovers in general, are obviously negative plays, but 2/3, if you will, 2/3 of the 2/3 of those interceptions were great plays, great plays by the defensive players. One obviously went to Stingley, but it was a batted ball by Will Anderson, right? It was a batted ball by Will Anderson. And then, of course, you said it. The other one was the phenomenal play, the phenomenal play by Derek Stingley, right? And I think that while, yes, it was a little bit underthrown, right? It was a little bit underthrown. You still, to your point, Jack, you have to give a little bit more credit to Stingley on that because of the way he went up and grabbed it. To a certain extent, it's we'll get Matty in here, and then he knows it all too well. But I remember an interception that happened in the Nebraska and Oklahoma game where a guy he lunged and intercepted it with one hand, diving interception. It was more freaky than Stingley's interception, but it was one of those things you can't harp on the quarterback too much because it's just more about how spectacular a play that was than it necessarily on the quarterback. But to your point,
lost him as a defender. That's what it was.
Exactly. It was almost truly a wide receiver. I know Pat Surtain wants to possibly be a wide receiver. Well, those are the kinds of plays that possibly make you a wide receiver, when you are playing defense. So,
sometimes there's those picks that you can just clearly see the defender just undercuts the route. Some of those picks are the corner runs the route better than the wide receiver does.
And then
you get the Derek Stingley pick that was just freak athleticism. Go ahead.
Well, the flip side to the Stingley pick is if that ball is probably 6 inches higher from Russ, that's a breakaway Sutton touchdown, and no one's even close to him. So he 100% sells out, play the ball, do or die. and it comes up the right way for him. But I mean, there's a separate universe where we're talking about that that ball being a receiving touchdown for Sutton, possibly giving that final push to the Broncos on their playoff trajectory.
Yeah, 100%.
Not to talk about parallel universes, but if they hit that reception to Sutton, the second one Stingley picked off, we're talking about that being possibly a franchise-altering play.
Right. Yeah, and I think
Doctor Strange picked the wrong outcome.
Yeah, blame the TVA, right? So I think just the other thing that we talked about like last week when we were previewing the game was one of the things that the Broncos could not afford. The Broncos could not afford was digging themselves in a hole, because like when you go look at the 5-game winning streak, they weren't necessarily like in big holes, right? Obviously, they were up 14-0 against the Cleveland Browns. They were
digging the holes for other teams.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, they really were, and in doing so, it allowed the pass rush. It allowed the pass rush to get home. It allowed them to be a little bit more, turnover ready, if you will, which was another thing that they didn't do. I mean, they really didn't win the turnover battle. And I think that even though there was maybe a crucial point, which will probably live in forever our memory, and which is when the ball was on the ground and literally there was no Texans in the area. There were no Texans in the area. It was all Broncos defense. Yeah, and they never came up with the football. So they were just bounced.
It was the reverse karma of the Cam Newton moment, but worse because there was no actual Texan near the ball.
Yeah. But the point, though, is just like the bounces that were going the Broncos' way were not going their way, in that Texans game. And
also, can we talk about, first of all, the Marvin Mims no call? Come on.
There are a few. There's
several, but that one just makes me lose sleep at night. Although, again, I feel like it's similar. Russ puts a bit more air under the ball. That's a touchdown.
Yeah. Well, Matty. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Matty, what is up, my guy? You've been kind of sitting, pretty there in the bottom corner. No truffle shuffle.
We put him in timeout for the truffle shuffle.
Yeah, no truffle shuffle. Oh, no, my.
All right, that's fine. Just don't.
There was no shuffle.
Okay, good.
Just a little rub.
We're good. We're fine.
Just little guy.
Sorry to interrupt you, Jack. Go ahead.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, to the point on that Mims no call, like it feels. Well, yes, it's a different scenario if we're talking about if Russ gets a little more air on the ball, but it feels like that's the exact same play that got the Broncos in field goal range against the Bills. A defender gets beat badly, a little bit of an underthrown ball, but in the end, the receiver still gets clobbered. And it feels like the two outcomes there should be a better placed ball and a touchdown or DPI. That especially like as we're just looking at that play across the NFL, that third scenario of incomplete pass with no flag doesn't really usually exist.
Yeah. So Matty, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, go ahead, Matty.
Yeah, how you doing, buddy?
Not great, Bob. So I got my happy butt up at 3:30 in the morning on Sunday, so that I could get ready and be on the road by 4, so I could be at the airport by 4:30, so I could fly out to DC for this training I have this week. I was supposed to land in DC by noon. Did not happen. There was fog in Detroit, which is where my connection was. And so we had to divert, and I spent an hour and a half just sitting on a plane on the runway in Indianapolis, waiting for the fog to move away. We ended up getting back to Detroit, or got up to Detroit, and I had missed my connection. So they were trying to schedule me to like stay overnight in Detroit, which sounds like so much fun. And then I'd leave at 9 a.m. and get to DC the next day on Monday. I was like, no. So I ended up flying into a different airport. If you know anything about DC, there are a couple of airports here. Most everybody flies into Reagan, which would have been convenient for me. I had to fly into Dulles and then catch an Uber, 40 minutes, whatever.
Oh my God, it's the worst. That's where I had to go when I flew into DC.
It was not great. So I ended up, my day started at 3:30. but I left at 4 Central Time. I did not get to my hotel on Eastern Time till 7:30. That was already bad enough, right? That was a long ass day. I was not happy. To make it even worse, as we were leaving Detroit to fly out to Washington, D.C., we get stopped and we have 4th down and 1 with about 2 minutes left to go in the game. And I have to shut my phone off because we're going to take off and I can't use Signal, right? You have to, be a responsible human and put it on airplane mode. And so I had no access to the game, but we were driving. It was 4th down and short. It turns out Javonte got the first down.
Yeah.
But I had no idea. So it was a little frustration, but like a lot of hope. Like, hey, we've seen this movie before. We're going to win. This whole crappy day is going to be worth it. And then I land and I take my phone off of airplane mode and I go to the ESPN app real quick because that's going to be the fastest way I could find out. And the Broncos scores grayed out, and which means that we lost. And I was just like, what the frick happened? Like, how did we lose? And then to see how we lost, like, just such a terrible day. So not great, Bob.
Yeah. And I like, as much as like to encompass all of that, like as much as you want to, talk about the positives, right? Like in terms of the growth, it's hard as a fan. Like it is hard as a fan to not watch that game and not want to gouge your eyes out. Like it, like with the way that it went down. I mean, it was just like, when you look at it just overall, like, I mean, you do have to give credit where credit is due, which is, Russell Wilson and the offense put them in that position to win the game, which like, and as crazy as it sounds, like I even had to like process it. The fact that they never converted a single 3rd down in the entire game. And yet they had a chance to go down and win the game. Like just reading something like that is almost like a Tim Tebow statistic, right? Like you didn't convert a single 3rd down, yet you actually had a chance to win the game. And, it was a really bad day overall. Just, I would just say, like, there were some plays where he would move the ball down and there were some really good throws, but like there were times where Russ was just flat out missing guys, or I should say a guy. And if Jordan, if you are listening to the show, this might be a very pro Jerry Jeudy podcast here tonight, because Jerry Jeudy was so open in the Texans game. And I said it on the 5280 podcast that if there was ever a game, and I know that we made this case before, that whenever Jerry Jeudy's open, it feels like maybe it's every game. But if there was ever a game where you can actually say to yourself, Jerry Jeudy was open nearly every single time and he never got the chance to get the ball, this was that game. There was a 4th down that obviously Russ went out and scrambled and got the first down. That's great. But you had a much more high percentage play to hit Jerry Jeudy wide open that the Magic school bus could have driven into the end zone on that score. I mean, like, it was wide open, and the only play that he hit him for, rough, I would say, was the 44-yard play where he fought, tooth and nail to try and get in the end zone and almost got in the end zone. And then the other one was a designed route, like in the end zone, like on that final drive, where he juked a defender. He was wide open, juked a defender, and if Russ finds him, if he had a yellow book with him and stood a little bit taller in the pocket, and I mean, like, and found Jerry Jeudy, like maybe you're talking about a touchdown there in the red zone, but like he was wide open the where he could have just waltzed in. So I mean, like, yeah, if there was ever a game where it's just, you could very easily tell that there's something off between those two, as far as confirmation, it was that game. Like, there is something off trust issues wise within both of those terms.
You could probably even say those 3 and kind of lump in offensive play calling into that, because it makes you wonder with how much they try to simplify what they're doing with Russ. I mean, it might just be me, but it almost feels like he's a 3-read guy now, in the sense of he's got his first read, which more often than not is Sutton when he's on the field. He's got his second read, and then he's got his convenient check down. And the check down has worked wonders at times. I mean, they don't win the Bills game or the Vikings game, it feels like, without being able to utilize P. Ryan down the stretch. But it makes you wonder, to at what point is Jeudy's action in the offense genuine, if not, clearing out space, taking away defenders? Is he more of a schematic decoy in a sense? Because like we saw, you can still hit him and get huge yards, and he still has the athletic ability to make things happen on his own. But to what extent is he really an actual cog? And it makes you wonder: is he back next year, regardless of that option being picked up?
Yeah,
is this kind of we were going to make it work for a year and then go from there? But it's tough to watch. To an extent, you can excuse some of it, but there are just some plays like where we saw this Texans game. I think it's fair to ask: do they win if they better incorporate Jerry Jeudy?
Right, exactly. Brandon?
Yeah, one thing I just want to come back to for a minute that Jack brought up that is interesting, the more that I think about it, is that they moved away from more of the run first, and I didn't really notice at the time, but like looking back at the game, it did feel like they were trying to be a bit more explosive, and it kind of hurt us, to be honest, a little bit.
I think I saw a stat where it was they attempted the most explosive passes that they had all year in terms of passes
I would not
aired
be
out,
surprised at all
20
if that was
plus
true.
yards.
Yeah.
I think it was either most or tied for most. It was like 8 or 9.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which surprised me, and it was kind of, you like seeing it as a fan because it's like, oh, it's a big play. But I do think it ended up hurting us. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if against the Chargers, even though they have a very bad pass defense, we kind of see the offense go back to what we were doing in the 5-game win streak, which is more of the shorter. I mean, you still have some shots, but you're not coming out the gate swinging.
Yeah, run the ball,
get
the ball to receivers with open space.
Yeah,
short passes with open space in front.
But no, I agree. I mean, I think I don't know what the hell the issue is with Jerry Jeudy in terms of him and Russ just don't have that connection, or he's just not the primary read in this offense, and it's just always Sutton, and Russ just only looks to the first read. I don't know what it is, but it
feels that
pretty
way.
Aggravating, to be honest. I know, you go back and even though film doesn't lie, whatever, you can look at a guy being wide open, and it's not always like Madden. You don't just stand there and immediately throw to the. I mean, I'm not saying don't throw the open player, but you have a process, and it's not always clear that it was just missed. But there definitely were several cases in this game where he was just completely open, and Russ did not see him at all, or didn't even look at him. This was, as much as the, we were kind of seeing Russ doing pretty well. This was one of his worst, bad games. And I think I said after the Browns game that was one of the best games we've seen of Russell Wilson. And then it went back immediately to one of the worst games of Russell Wilson. And then last night we had the worst shooting game of Jokic's career. So maybe Denver's just cursed right now. I don't know. Yeah,
maybe there's something really bad in the water on that. But I think that one of the reasons why there's a couple of reasons why I feel like the Broncos were a little bit more, wanting to air it out a little bit more, was the Houston Texans secondary was a bit suspect against the pass, right? They're a bit suspect against the pass. And I think that they saw that. And, sadly, in one of the first few plays of the game was that play to Sutton. And just unfortunately, after that moment, it just set the entire thing, it just set the entire standard for what it was that entire game, right? If you will, it just kind of set it all of what we're possibly going to expect. And I think that even, and then because of that, because of, say, that first play, if you will, and then the Texans getting up as far as they did quickly, which was 10-0, at that point, you almost would have to be forced to throw the ball a little bit through the air and then by that point, when you are feeding it like that, the team is going to expect that. And I think that just unfortunately, the Broncos were just in a really tough situation. It felt like right out of the get-go. And And a lot of it, and as much as the defense turned it around in the game, like the defense itself turned themselves around in the game. If there's any sort of blame in terms of unit as well, it would also have to be the defense too, because the defense were also the ones that just unfortunately gave up a lot of yardage, right? It gave up a lot of yardage.
Explosive plays.
Yeah, I mean, yardage. Well, if you want to talk about explosive plays, let's just talk about Nico Collins. I mean, because Nico Collins, he gave me flashbacks to George Kittle versus Vance Joseph when Kittle almost had 200 yards almost in the first half. I mean, he was always open, and like he was like prime Megatron in that game. I mean, the guy was open like all the time, and like and again, like you want to talk about like setting the standard for what we saw in that game. It ended up sort of being that first drive too, where as much as you want to, put your fan card on, which, I mean, we probably we'll have that conversation. You can't put yourself in a disadvantageous situation of drawing that penalty on CJ Stroud, right? And I'm talking about Alex Singleton. He played great, but as a player, like when he's talking to the media, he's going to end up talking about, I probably should never have, put myself into that situation. And we also know that when referees are looking at calls, it's not really the first person that, makes the action. It's the second person that makes the action. And just unfortunately, I think in that turn of events, Singleton was the second person that made that action. And in doing so, they called it on, Singleton and, giving CJ Stroud the superstar treatment already as a rookie and not giving him a call. But I think in an ideal world, you would have wanted that to be an offsetting penalty because, and because it wasn't, it set the Texans up for even better field position. And in doing so, put them up 10-0. Like it put them up 10-0. And that was, as we said, that's a pretty big hole at that point.
If we're going to have this mantra, dirty Denver, right? Like we're going to have this perspective, this reputation across the NFL, then like F it. Like let's go all the way. Singleton could have lit Stroud up on that play and let up. He could have lit him up and said, I didn't hear the whistle, because he got in there immediately and then he let up and he was kind of talking. And yeah, he was, whatever around Stroud. And then Stroud headbutts him and he just pushes him away. That ref could not get the flag out fast enough.
Yeah.
You know what? Fine. If they're going to throw the flag on us anyway, let's get our money's worth. Hit that dude. Light him up. Like, fine. Whatever. You know what? They're going to call us dirty Denver and they're going to give us penalties in accordance with that. Fine. We're going to lean all the way into it. So he got him back. There was a play action later in the game, and it looked very similar. And Singleton just ran through him. It was beautiful to watch that karma take place. But goodness gracious, that was 4 points, right? That was 4 points. Instead of them having to kick a field goal there, they got a touchdown, and then later in the game, like we could have, kicked a field goal and that would have been it and we would have won and happy days. So like that single play, don't put yourself in that position. He didn't do anything to start that. If he wanted to start something, he really could have there. Yeah. It's just, we're starting to see that now. The Broncos aren't going to get those calls. We already knew that there was a certain mindset with refs against Peyton. We certainly saw that in the NFC Championship game with the most egregious pass interference call known to man that was not called. Like that's going to be it. So our margin for error is even smaller now. But we can't hang our heads on this loss.
That's right.
We got to move forward. And if we're going to, people are going to call us dirty Denver, and then fine, pitter patter. You know what I mean? Like, let's get at her. Let's get it done.
So with that, it's probably fitting we transition into our next topic, because one of the things that we talked about in our last show was about playoff confidence, right? And because like that was the thing is like, how confident would you be if the Denver Broncos beat the Browns, and if they beat Houston, what would your confidence level be at? Well, now it unfolded that it was part B of that. The Broncos beat Cleveland and they lost to Houston. And I think I saw today that and again, this was a really good point that I heard the other day. They don't really factor in, of course, when you're playing, or like the backup quarterback situation, right? Possibly with, now we're possibly going to see maybe something in Jacksonville. We may see something in, obviously we're going to see something in Cincinnati, in terms of, yeah. So they don't really factor that, of course, into that. So, but they had it at 25%, which is still a decent percentage. It's certainly not the 64% or whatever it was, if they would have beaten Houston. So I will say that, I still feel rather okay with where things are, with where the Broncos are. And it's probably fair we talk about this because Jair had this comment where it said, if we go 3-2 with L's, so like 2 losses and 3 wins to Lions and Chargers, do we get into the wild card? It depends on what we have in front of us, right? And I think that, yeah, so I mean, and I think that the way I preface this is I think, and I tweeted it afterwards that at the end of the day, we're seeing progress with this football team, right? So like if we were to take a step back and if we were to like really like evaluate where things were, if you were to tell me that the Broncos would be finishing at 9-8, if you will, to what Jair was saying, and they would be scratching in nearly every single game that they would be possibly making the playoffs, I think I would be rooting for that because, here's the case where the Broncos have never had meaningful football in nearly 8 years. So we're finally getting to that point. I mean, we said it, the Houston Texans game was maybe the biggest game we've ever had in 8 years, right? And now it's a little bit doom and gloom now, right? And you to where, the Broncos are, they're not going to make the playoffs anymore because they lost to this team. They lost to the Houston Texans, which is one game, and all is history, all is lost. And it's just like, if we just take a step back a little bit and just realize that the Broncos have a real chance of going 9-8 and possibly getting to, 10 wins still and not getting in, that is a victory still in and of itself.
If we win against the Chargers and the Steelers lose tonight, which is currently 21-10 Patriots, then our playoff chances go up to 45%. So we ain't out of this yet. Not even close. I find it funny. Both 5-win teams lost this last weekend. The Eagles being the other one.
Chiefs lost too.
Yeah, but they didn't win 5 in a row.
But still, I mean,
the whole point was we were both won 5 in a row. We both lost. There's nothing to do with the Chiefs.
I'm division.
I get it. I know.
I'm thinking big picture here. No, go ahead, Jack.
Well, and I think you also have
I
to consider
beat you by 2 seconds.
The Lions have been prone to randomly laying massive turds. I mean, for as much as I like Jordan Love and as good as I think he can be, to get chased out of your own stadium on Thanksgiving is embarrassing.
You mean Jared Goff? You said Jordan Love. You mean Jared Goff?
Well, right. Well, no. I think Love is good, but to be chased.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, but to be the Lions and to be chased out of your own building by Jordan Love, and I mean, I think Jaden Reed is nice. He's a good piece, but I mean, so and I think you also have to be factoring in that by the second Chargers game, the Broncos might have a chance to put the nail in the coffin on Brandon Staley's Chargers tenure this week. I mean, if they lose at home to a Broncos team they're chasing in the playoffs, I mean, this dude already is about as on thin ice as you can be. I mean, it feels like every time you turn on whatever network football television program you're watching and they're talking about the Chargers, it's something pretty negative about Brandon Staley. I mean, I think Rex Ryan was calling him a joke 2 weeks ago. I mean, Dan Orlovsky couldn't think of something nice to say about him. And these are two guys that are, at least in my opinion, pretty impartial.
and classy.
Yeah, I mean, like
well,
those are two pretty straightforward dudes.
Yeah.
But I think you made the point. Like you have to consider that. You know, as you look at Pittsburgh getting, I mean, talk about the Lions getting housed at home. You have Bailey Zappi just slapping the Steelers silly at home right now.
Yeah.
I mean, and you have a head-to-head win over the Browns. Yes, you have that loss to the Texans, but I mean, if they catch the Lions on a bad day, they have a legitimate chance at winning out. But the flip side of that is if you're going to get, you know, if you're going to get a Broncos team that can't find its offensive identity like they did last week and is playing themselves into a style of football that they have proven they can't play, then you might be looking at finishing 7-10 or 8-9. And at that point, we're saying, well, at that point, the conversations might be, wow, that 5-game winning streak did nothing and cost us some decent draft spacing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think there's just so many wild cards left in their schedule. I mean, the Chargers are always going to charge you, but you know, I think I'd be more afraid to face interim head coach Kellen Moore than I currently am to face Brandon Staley, because I at least trust that Brandon Staley has one atrociously stupid thing to do each quarter that'll cost the Chargers the game.
You know, it's funny. It's funny you say that because I think I said last week or something to likes of like the Chargers were really the games that I kind of like were the most worried about, if you will, like as far as the stretch. I think I said this on 50-80, but like because like there is a scenario where say the Broncos beat the Chargers and they win by double digits, like, right? I don't know how you keep Staley like at that point, because
especially at home,
like, you know, and it's probably one of the reasons why the Patriots are playing so well, because they scored 0 points against the Chargers, right? And the Chargers only scored 6 points, and that was the final score was 6-0. You know, after the bottom of the ninth. I mean, it was just like, so I think that, you know, if you go look at it from just to like it's a divisional game, divisional games bring, I think, the most out of teams, like the most out of teams. And so I think that from this, it's like, if you can look at it from, if you can win this game, it'll give you enough confidence for the game at home, which you'll be on, I want to say it's on New Year's Eve, right? That's the New Year's Eve game. So if you can do that, you know, then you're possibly talking about a situation where you at least have enough confidence. Now, again, like you're possibly talking about a situation where you're maybe talking about facing new coaches for the Chargers game, and you will obviously be facing a new coach for the Raiders, right? So, yeah, but it is definitely favorable, and I think that what is it? The remaining schedule for some of these teams.
I think it's the Browns that play a gauntlet. Either the Browns or the Steelers. Maybe it's, I don't know. One of the wild card teams just has a gauntlet down the stretch. It might be the Bills, I think. I think the Bills just play a horribly awful schedule. But I mean, to the point you were making earlier, I mean, of the quarterbacks currently above you, you have C.J. Stroud, who is a great quarterback, but you have Gardner Minshew, you have Joe Flacco, and now you have Mitch Trubisky. So I think the other part of this conversation is, do you trust those quarterbacks to get it done? I mean, the only thing Joe Flacco really is going for him these days is he can turn Elijah Moore into a good receiver once every couple of years. I mean, and you have to talk. I mean, and I think you have to look at the impending. You know, how long is that absence for Jonathan Taylor going to be? You know, if the Steelers lose today, I mean, and this will be the first game after Najee Harris basically dismissed anything about Mitch Trubisky's leadership. So, I mean, there are for as bad as you can say the Broncos played last week. I mean, all these teams above them have a good deal of skepticism that's deserved.
What say you?
The Browns' defense has been.
Well, and then with the Jonathan Taylor thing, unfortunately, Zach Moss looks like a quite capable backup, but pretty much other than the top 3 teams. I mean, and I know the latest out of Jacksonville is that it's
more or less fine.
Not as bad. But I mean, it's not nothing. Like, you're right. Every team ahead of us, ironically, except for kind of the Texans, seem to be, there's question marks.
Yeah. Matty?
I mean, we're going to need a little bit of help, right? Like, there are games that some teams play against other teams that we're fighting against, but like, you know, and tonight, right? Like, if New England can beat Pittsburgh, that's certainly help. But what we lost last week in losing to the Texans was controlling our own destiny. And that's always a tough spot to be in. That's not to say that we won't get that help eventually, but it just means that, like, you know, some things are going to have to fall into place for us. And our margin for error is essentially nil now, right? You know, 10 wins may still not be enough to get us in. Maybe. I mean, tiebreakers get hairy, right? And we don't have heads up games against the Colts. We lost to the Texans, right?
We're Browns, and that's it.
We got the Browns, like Pittsburgh. We don't play them. So, like, we don't get a chance to give them an L and get the tiebreaker. And so after that, things get a little hairy. So, yeah, like, I'm not smart enough to know what all the tiebreaker scenarios are for the next 5 weeks, compounded into 17 game schedule and what that looks like at the end. Like, I'm not that
somewhere in there.
I'm not that dude, right? And you know what? Like, our luck, we would lose that. So, I know that we're gonna have to obviously handle business. 3 of our games are against division foes. We played the Patriots, which is nice. We played Detroit on the road, which is not nice. And the Bills have a really tough schedule. The Texans should navigate their schedule fairly easily. The Browns, I mean, the Jaguars that are beat up, the Bears, pretty, you know, whatever there. The Texans is going to be tough, but the Jets and Bengals, they should win. The Colts, Bengals, we see what the Steelers are offering. Falcons, Raiders, and then the Texans, like, they could win 3 of those games fairly easily. And then Pittsburgh has New England tonight, which it's still early and they could figure it out. The Colts, Bengals, Seahawks, and the Ravens. So, like, it's not guaranteed that we're going to jump all these teams, you know, and games can go either way. Maybe that Raven game by the end of the season, maybe they're resting their guys because they've already got the 1 seed wrapped up. Like, we don't know at that point. So, like, some people are sitting there, like, pumping their chest like we're still great. And Sarah, if you're listening to this, I love you dearly. But, like, I'm a little more concerned about our chances than other people are at this point because we don't control our own destiny. We're going to need some help.
Well, I think it's really interesting how these conversations have kind of shifted in a sense from what can we do to kind of surpass Indianapolis and Houston to now we're looking at a Browns team that is indefinitely quarterbacked by Joe Flacco with a defense that after giving up 29, I mean, they got manhandled a little bit by the Rams. And now you have the Steelers who are getting manhandled at home by the Patriots with Mitch Trubisky as the indefinite quarterback. So that conversation kind of might be starting to shift from what are the odds we can jump Indianapolis and Houston to if this Cleveland-Pittsburgh free fall continues, to what extent do we really need much to do?
Yeah. Brandon?
I mean, you guys kind of hit the nail on the head.
Flacco.
Like, I don't really have anything else to add there besides just looking forward a little bit to the Chargers game.
Yeah.
Well, Brandon, let me ask you this.
Go for it.
Oh, the teams we're talking about here. Your quarterbacks are Gardner Minshew,
Yeah,
Mitch Trubisky, Joe Flacco for now when he comes back, DTR. You have CJ Stroud, and then you have Russell Wilson. Realistically, Stroud's the only quarterback you're taking over Russ out of that group.
Mm-hmm.
So to what extent does that matter?
I mean, You're not wrong. I like Gardner Minshew. I think Gardner Minshew is okay, but yeah, you're totally right. And I do think, the weird thing about this is this was by far the easiest defense that we've played so far this season. But defenses change. I mean, we learned that with our defense, right? And I will say, with having a guy like D'Amico Ryans as the coach, it was kind of surprising how bad their defense was, especially with the talent like Derek Stingley. So I'm not too surprised. But I mean, yeah, Russ had a bad game, but I'm not completely out on the guy. Like, I think he can bounce back. If he's going to bounce back as a passer, he has a great opportunity to right the ship next week, because again, the Chargers defense is probably worse than the Texans defense.
It's the most expensive defense in football.
I know, but it's horrible. It's
ranked
funny
like
how bad it is. But a big part of that is not on the team anymore, which is JC Jackson.
They're either all old, hurt, or just suck.
Yeah. So it's going into what I was going to say real quick, and then I'll let you go, Matty. I think a lot of it comes down to, it's weird, not just this game against the Chargers. We haven't even played the Chargers at all. We have 2 games against the Chargers. I think a lot comes down to those 2 games against the Chargers.
Yep.
Because they're in division.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they're in the AFC. If we win both of those, I'm feeling more confident about the playoffs. Is it possible that we were mathematically eliminated from the playoffs before we have the second game against them? Sure. But that's really the team that I'm looking at here. And I know we play the Raiders too, which is also big, because again, it's in division, but the Chargers I'm kind of looking at as those kind of back in that must-win category. I don't even know if I would say it's a playoff game, because the Chargers are beyond dysfunctional.
But it's a spoiler. It's a spoiler game. If you're the Chargers, it's a spoiler game.
But Brandon Staley's horrible.
To Matty's point earlier about tiebreakers, if you don't have that head-to-head, the first go-to is in-conference winning percentage.
Yeah.
So if you can rack up wins in the AFC, let alone in your division, that's how you're jumping on Indianapolis or Pittsburgh, where you don't play them. You don't get the chance at that.
Exactly. And I know they're technically out of the playoffs right now, but just when you look at this division and you look at the Dolphins, the Ravens, the Chiefs, the team that you always normally put there too, the Bills, are not only below us, but also
the tough schedule.
Sean McDermott stuff, but they down bad. The Bills are down bad, man.
They have a ruthless end of the schedule too. Matty,
the Chiefs next. They play the Chiefs next, which, by the way, I am officially a massive Bills fan. Could you imagine if the Bills beat the Chiefs? They could. I would not be surprised if it happens. They are a team that could beat the Chiefs.
Matty's confident a bit.
Yeah.
There are a couple of things that I need to address with this. One, you talked about all those quarterbacks. Which would you rather have? Well, you have to add an additional win to each of those quarterbacks, because they all have 7 wins right now. Pittsburgh has 7 wins. The Colts have 7. The Browns have 7. And the Texans have 7. We only have 6, and we're chasing them. The bye weeks are no longer a thing, right? So we're chasing wins. We're not caring about the loss column, because we played the same amount of games now, so it's all even. So there's that part first. Second part, I'm glad that you brought up the tiebreakers and going into conference, because we have 6 wins. 3 of those wins have been in the NFC. So we're talking about Minnesota, talking about Chicago, and talking about Green Bay. And we lost to the Commanders, almost said the other Washington team. So half of our wins have been out of conference, which doesn't help us. So that's also a concern for us there. I would have rather we had lost out in the NFC and won out in the AFC. That would have been much more advantageous for us. So that's something to keep in consideration. And we still only have, we have one more NFC game to go that we have to win, but that won't help us in the tiebreaker, right? If we end up with the same amount of wins. So,
I think it gets tricky, because it's like if it gets tricky, because then they start looking at strength of schedule. Is that they kind of look at strength of schedule and then.
Well, it's like common opponents and stuff like that, which
they should just win out, and none of this matters.
All right,
they should, but the thing
11-6, no one cares.
Well, 11-6, keep in mind there's precedent in the NFL for a team to win 11 games and still not make the playoffs. The Matt Castle led New England Patriots also won 11 games with one less game to play in their season. They won 11-5, and they still missed out on the playoffs. So crazier things have happened.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure all of us would be really disappointed to win 11 games and miss the playoffs. For sure. It would be funny if the Broncos just somehow beat Detroit, and we're not at the Detroit preview yet or the Detroit game yet. But if they beat Detroit, we will officially have swept the NFC North. We will have swept the NFC North. Yeah, because
the worst division in that conference.
Yeah.
Does someone have to win the South? Are we sure about that?
Well, I mean, so I will say this. I'd be curious to find out. Obviously, the Trevor Lawrence injury may shake it up a bit, depending on if he's able to play. But maybe if we were Houston Texans fans, we're actually, I would say, rooting that they take the division. That they can actually take the division versus, a wild card spot. Because if you're talking about division, then maybe with where things currently sit with the Jacksonville Jaguars and with Trevor Lawrence out, that could possibly impact things, record-wise and seeding-wise and, so on and so forth. But what is important and what is at hand, of course, is if the Broncos can take care of business against the Los Angeles Chargers over there at SoFi Stadium with a bunch of, Denver Bronco fans and, rent a stadium, that the Chargers have there at SoFi Stadium, and a bunch of AI fans, that they like to use so much down in that stadium. I will. So we should preface this by saying, and we've touched on the Chargers a little bit and how maybe it might be a little bit of a struggle. We should preface this by saying the Broncos are the better team, right? The Broncos are the better team against the Los Angeles Chargers, but they will win this game how, and they will lose this game how.
Well, I think you can start, and we made this point before Matty hopped on. It felt like the Broncos tried to change their offensive identity last week to fit the defense that they were playing, and it clearly did not work. They were out of sync all game, and it did not feel like we were watching the same offense that had helped that team win 5 in a row. So they win the game by getting back to their offensive identity, being able to kind of it's not to sound like the old fart, but to establish the run, ground and pound. But that's been their identity. I think if they can get back to their identity and what helped get them to the point where they could win 5 games, force other defenses to try and go more fast paced, which creates turnovers. They win the turnover battle. They need to get back to what won them 5 games. They lose if they face a Chargers offense that remembers that they have a lot of really good players on that side of the ball. And I think you're always afraid of the rookie breakout game, and for as bad as things have been for a certain Chargers rookie wide receiver, and I'm not even going to try and put this out, let me say his name to put it out in the atmosphere. But if the Broncos are going to Bronco and they're still the same with the same, voodoo magic that's been over them for the past 8 years, there is a certain Chargers wide receiver who is a breakout game this week. And you always have Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen's been killing us for years. And Justin Herbert is one of the greatest quarterbacks in the NFL for a reason. So I think they're too good of a team to actually be as bad as their record says.
Right.
But when you're this far into the season, you are what your record says.
Yeah,
I don't know about you guys, but I don't. I'm not sitting down to willingly watch a lot of Chargers football, so it'll be interesting to see just how bad they are this week and how much of that is on the offensive side.
Brandon and Matty, let me ask you this, because I actually asked you guys this question, and actually you can comment on this, Jack. Before the season started, I asked you guys who was under the most pressure this season. Was it Kellen Moore, because he was a recent, head coaching candidate in the cycle, and he possibly can really resurrect his career by, doing wonders with Justin Herbert, and in doing so possibly make himself a head coaching candidate. Now, he could be their head coach for the Chargers by default if they let go of, Brandon Staley. But so I will say, whose pressure, was the most under? Was it, Kellen Moore, or was it Justin Herbert? Now, kind of looking back on it, has it shifted a little bit because of what we've seen with Justin Herbert? Because surely, and again, you touched briefly with the Jack Leggy. He is far too good of a quarterback, for him to be as bad as it is right now with the Chargers, with guys like Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer. He's at least got some weapons there. And of course, there's Gerald Everett, who's not a bad tight end. Austin Eckler, he's not a bad running back, but apparently they're thinking about, maybe lessening his workload a little bit. And maybe that, is something, maybe that's a smokescreen as they're heading into Sunday. I don't know, but
he kind of fell off a cliff the last 2 weeks though.
Yeah. But so circling back a little bit, though, Brennan, have you done maybe a little bit of a 180 on that question? A little bit?
I think it's definitely Brandon Staley. But I'm not going to lie, I think this sounds weird to say. It feels weird to say. I think Dak helped Kellen Moore more than Kellen Moore helped Dak. Because the whole thing with the Chargers for so long is you never run out of excuses with the Chargers. Because every year it's like, the Chargers are the sneaky team in the AFC that's going to go the distance. The Chargers are going to win the AFC.
They're a deep team.
The Chargers or whatever. The Chargers, the Chargers. And then for a little bit there was like, they can't. They can't block. They don't have a good tackle. But then they go out and draft. Actually, a lot of good offensive linemen. Then they don't have weapons. Well, they drafted he who will not be named this last year. I think it was the first wide receiver taken who has been bad. Don't say it. I know who it is. Just don't say it. But they had Mike Evans Keenan Allen, but then they had
Mike Williams,
who obviously was unfortunately injured, who's very good for them. Not Mike Evans, better Mike. Mike Evans is the better Mike. Keenan Allen obviously has been very good for them. Josh Palmer is a good wide receiver.
Yeah, he's a solid 3.
They have that guy whose name I can never remember.
Jalen Guyton.
Guyton, who's actually kind of decent too. Gerald Everett is a pretty good tight end. So they have the weapons. Davis. And then going into last year, it was it's the offensive coordinator, who ironically is now the Broncos offensive coordinator, who's Joe Lombardi. Now they got rid of Joe Lombardi and they got Kellen Moore, who's going to be, turn things around and do great things with Justin Herbert. And Kellen Moore it's kind of looked the same. Chargers games still look the same in that offense as they did before.
So are you saying that Justin Herbert is maybe to blame here?
No, I think it's Brandon Staley.
No, that's the easy one, and I think that's the right answer. But I'm just saying between the two of them.
No, I think it's Brandon Staley, but I also think that Kellen Moore isn't as good as people thought he was going to be. Justin Herbert, as much as I don't like him for being a rival, I feel for that guy. I low key became a slight fan of his when he quoted Monty Python with his hand injury in the press conference. But you watched his games, and it was literally this last week against this last week against the Patriots. The week before that, he threw just an absolute just dart on a rope to Keenan Allen. Just ridiculous ball placement. Keenan drops it.
He's had 2 balls that.
There's so many. He gets let down by his. It's actually I think they're cursed. They literally are cursed with the amount of drops that he deals with. It's just always something. It's always something for the Chargers. And you know what? I just can't ever bring myself to believe that that's ever going to change. And it's insane to think about. They spent all that money on the defense. The defense is horrible. Brandon Staley cannot call the defense well. He exploded on, I think it was more than once. He exploded on a reporter for asking about, like, I think it was if he was going to give up play calling or something. And he was like super pissed at them.
And it's a fair question.
It's a fair question. I mean,
Especially
the defense
when
is
your defense looks that bad.
bad. Yeah. And at a certain point, I think it also goes up to the Spanos family and the ownership, which just makes me more thankful for the Broncos ownership. But it's just, there's just where does it end? Like, I don't know. I still think I'm going to put more of it on Brandon Staley. I'm going to put a decent amount of it on Kellen Moore. But I think Justin Herbert, like, as much as I don't like him because he's a rival, I kind of feel bad for him just slightly.
So you're not going to put any blame on him?
I'm going to put some blame on him. I mean, he's the one that's playing quarterback. He's not completely blameless, but also you watch him play and he makes just Mahomes-like throws, just ridiculous throws, pinpoint accurate throws, and just people can't catch him. Like, I'm not saying he's completely devoid of blame because, I mean, there's so much blame to go around there. He has to take a little bit of it, but I'm going to put way more of it on the coaching. And I'm going to put honestly even some more of it on just that organization is cursed and dysfunctional and screwed.
Matty?
He makes Mahomes-like throws, but does he do it when the game's on the line and they got to have it?
Right.
That's why I do put some of it on him. But he did make that throw. They just couldn't catch it. The guy didn't catch it.
He who shall not be named.
He's one of the least clutch quarterbacks in the NFL. Fairly well documented how poor the results are when he has the ball and they have a chance to go up. They have either a game tying or game winning drive late in the fourth quarter. I think he has like 1 out of like 12 opportunities in his career that they've actually been able to convert that. Pretty poor when it matters. The problem is it matters for that team a lot because their coaching puts them in that position a lot. They have so many one-score losses over the last, 4 or 5 seasons as well. So, like, we think we've had it bad. Like, at least we've had a few where we've gotten freaking blown out, right? They just have Heartbreak Hotel seemingly every week when they lose. So there's certainly blame to go for Staley. The message has gone stale there. It's time for them to move on. Kellen Moore may be in there. Yeah, exactly. Kellen Moore, we'll see what he does with that team moving forward after they inevitably get rid of Staley. The thing that's funny is, and I'm glad that you brought it up, Brandon, Kellen Moore, if he would have stayed on with Dallas, could have picked his job this year with how Dak has played. Dak is playing like an MVP.
Maybe
if they go beat, yeah, I mean, it's pretty incredible what the last month has looked like for him. And Kellen Moore certainly would have gotten a lot of that credit. I don't think McCarthy is going to get enough credit for what that looks like in Dallas. So maybe some people, have some receipts that they need to throw in the trash compactor or whatever, right? They need to light those on fire. I'm looking at ESPN app.
Recycle
31.2% chance for the Broncos to win this game, yet they're only 2.5-point underdogs on the road. The road, if you're a road team, you're already at a 3-point disadvantage. So that's Vegas saying that the Broncos are already the better team than the Chargers. They're just playing on the road. And I think ESPN's 68.6% favor of the Chargers in this one just doesn't jive with me. The math's not mathing for that for me, especially considering that out of the two quarterbacks, you talk about which quarterback would you rather have. Which one would you rather have in crunch time in a one-possession game, which Vegas says it's going to be? I would much rather have Russell Wilson in this scenario than Justin Herbert.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jack.
I think I try to use soft words on podcasts because I know these things follow you around forever. And excuse my French for a second. But if you want to just talk about how fucking pathetic the Chargers are, you need to start with halftime of their playoff game. You lose in cataclysmic, historic fashion. Okay, Charger, whatever. But you go into the spring of Sean Payton. Since day one, you have Spanos family wants Peyton. Peyton wants the Spanos family. Just get a room. This is going to be great.
Right.
But then you start to hear, well, they like Staley. They probably should have won the game. That's a once in a lifetime collapse. He's the right guy for the job. And like as has been pointed out, I forget who said it. We'll bring in Kellen Moore. That's our excuse this time. We need a better offensive coordinator. So then you have Sean Payton go to a division rival, but you think to yourself, all right, whatever, it's the Broncos. The Broncos are going to Bronco. The Chargers are a laughably bad franchise. I mean, they are, and I don't say this lightly, they're becoming the New York Mets of the NFL.
And you would know.
And I would know.
This is why you have a baseball guy on a football podcast.
They are little
That's
brother.
Perfect.
Yeah.
They are little brother in a massive market to a team that has proven whenever they want can go out and get the star and has the headline grabbing head coach, headline grabbing ownership, has won the ring. And Justin Herbert is like what David Wright was in the early 2010s, where you think to yourself, this man needs like an entire psychiatric team.
It's perfect
to like preside over him on the daily, because there's no way someone can exist in this situation and be mentally right. So then you move into this year, you have he who shall not be named as he's going to be part of the answer. It's going to be great. And dude just blows. I mean, it's almost like you feel for him at this point because it's gotten to the point of how awful it is. And it's clearly not Kellen Moore that's going to fix everything. Head coaching, I mean, Brandon Staley is almost unrecognizable from when he first came into the league as a head coach. It's like he's afraid of fourth downs now when he was trying to champion the go for it on fourth down movement. It's unrecognizable from when he started. Your defense is old and bad and injured, and it's like the Mets pitching all of those 2010s years. For as cool as Johan Santana was, he had the elbow strength of like well-cooked barbecue. Lift it up, everything falls off the bone. So it's insane how like just looking at everything. Like if you're if a Chargers fan asked you at halftime of Wild Card Weekend,
right,
what is the worst possible way the next 300 days can go? You tell them it's you lose this game, you don't get Sean Payton, Brandon Staley gets worse, the defense is completely old, and everyone in the offense except for Justin Herbert forgets how to play football. And by the way, Austin Eckler is starting to run at the same speed as Eddie Lacy.
Wait, or
genuinely, it could not be going worse for the Chargers, because the question now is, all right, you fire Brandon Staley. Who wants to be little brother in a massive market where you're going to be in cap hell soon? And we haven't even talked about Nick Bosa.
Or Joey Bosa.
Joey Bosa, sorry. We haven't even talked about him in his injury, in his lack of presence right now. And no injury is ever a guarantee to come back from. How long has it? It's taken Cortland years to look like how he looked before his injury again.
Yeah, and I think
we didn't even brought up the injuries of the Chargers, which it feels like you take one step on the field in a Chargers uniform, there's a 25% chance you're going to blow out your knee.
Yeah.
That's just the way it's been going for them.
What? I mean, and Rashawn Slater, and that's the other thing to your point, with those injuries, it's like you're at least guaranteed to have, well, I mean, maybe with the Chargers, it's rare, but you're guaranteed to have at least two massive injuries, like big time injuries for that franchise that just derail your season. Rashawn Slater and for Joey Bosa. Joey Bosa is a tremendous talent. He cannot stay on the field for whatever reason. So, it reminded me a little bit when Aaron Rodgers was with the Packers, how the Packers were cursed at one point, with all the injuries that they were sustaining, in the NFC. The Chargers are now the AFC version of that, right? Now the AFC version of that. Because every single year they're cursed. And even for Justin Herbert, he can't even get out of Phillip Rivers' shadow. So I mean, you can perform all you want and have great throws and perform, but you're not performing at, say, the highest of levels. And I mean, I feel like Phillip Rivers at least has a chance or a conversation to possibly, be a Hall of Fame quarterback. And I say a conversation. Doesn't mean he gets in or whatnot. But Justin Herbert is as talented and frankly more talented than Rivers. But yet it's the same stuff. It's the same stuff over and over and over again. And so I think maybe the encompassing thing is the Spanos family, which, by the way, they're poor. It's well documented that they are poor. I mean, they
got no cash.
They got no cash. I joked, but they have a rent a stadium. They were so poor, they rented a stadium to play with the Rams at SoFi Stadium. And before that, they played at a soccer stadium, which they rented for 20-some thousand fans, which is the majority of their fans that they have anyway. So it's just I just think that for the Chargers, they just can't get out of their own way. As talented as they are, they just can't get out of their own way. Brandon?
Well, the one thing I was about to say too is, and maybe this is just me, but it feels weird how borderline invisible Khalil Mack has been for having 15 sacks.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just me? I mean, granted, he got 6 of them against the Raiders, and Aiden O'Connell, which I don't even count that. But there are other, I mean, obviously major signing when they brought him in, which was, I know it was technically last year. But it just, I mean, it's weird. He kind of, we talked about Joey Bosa, but the Khalil Mack, I feel like I remember going into this, it's the Joey Bosa Khalil Mack duo is the best pass rush duo.
Didn't we do an episode like that or something? It was something along the lines of that?
Something.
Yeah.
And it's is it though?
Yeah.
Because not much has happened.
Well, looking at this game from the preview side of things as well, if the offensive line does exactly what it did last week, Khalil Mack will give the Broncos shades of, Michael Schofield and Khalil Mack days where he ends up getting 4 sacks, against the Broncos, which is still haunting in my memory. Of course, and I think maybe Ty Sambraila was in that game as well. But the offensive line at least needs to get itself together. I mean, go ahead, Jack.
Well, so you can argue the blueprint is there with how they handled Myles Garrett. I mean, they've already proven this year that they can schematically figure out how to neutralize an S tier NFL pass rush.
Unless it's Will Anderson.
Yeah, that one they couldn't figure out. They got the Myles Garrett part. They slept on the road for some part.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's got to start there, right? It's got to start with getting your identity back. It's got to start with bringing back, let's pound the rock. Let us run the rock until our feet bleed, right? We love you, Javonte, but let's get your feet bleeding, right? But let's get back to those 20 carries. One of the things that was a big thing when that winning streak was, with the Chiefs game and the Bills game, Javonte had 20 carries, right? Javonte had 20 carries, or you decided to divvy up the carries, of 10 plus carries or more between Samaje Perine and Javonte Williams. Let's do something. Let's do some more of that. Let's do a little bit more of that balance. Let's get Samaje featured a little bit in the passing game, not on 2-minute offenses, but just let's get Samaje involved a little bit more. And so, yeah, I'm hopeful that we can be able to, also create some turnovers. And Matty, what are you looking forward to in this Chargers game?
I'm looking forward to a team that plays hyper aggressive. I do like that we came out aggressive against Houston. I don't like that we dropped the ball right away. The deep ball to Sutton, I think, could have set a great tone. And we've seen that from Peyton. We started the season with an onside kick. So I forgot about that. It's not out of the realm of us to try to go put a team on its heels right away. What better team to go bust right in the mouth right away than the Chargers, who it seems like by all intents and purposes, they are looking for a reason to quit on that head coach. They just seem like they're done to me. And maybe you could play this back and it'll be freezing cold takes and whatever, and I'll just take the L. But this team does not look like they are galvanized around their leader. It looks like they are ready for new leadership. And so they're not going to – this doesn't seem like a team that's going to make that last play because, you know, they gotta win one for the squad, even though they're like only one game behind us. One for the Gipper, yeah. Like it's a team that seems like, yes, they've been in so many of those close games that they might be they might have more mental dexterity, if you will. They just don't have the muscle memory of winning those games. And so they almost expect to lose them at this point. I think that we need to come out and be just as aggressive in this game as we were against Houston. Maybe if we get around the quarterback, we just have Singleton not go give him a light, gentle touch or whatever.
You can't breathe on him.
The pass interference stuff we can't fix.
Yeah, it's unavoidable.
That's not on us. Like if they're gonna let a defensive back run through the receiver coming back for the ball, and that's the way it is. Yeah. What I do want to see is more balls like the first one to Cortland Sutton, where it was out in front of him, than like a lot of the other balls that have been thrown downfield, where the receiver is having to stop or come back to it. I want to see us lead the receiver downfield and punish the safeties for playing aggressive against the run. Maybe we throw the ball a little bit to open it up against the run. What I do not want to see is our offensive scheme against the Bills and the Vikings, in which they were playing 2 or even 3 high at times and keeping everything in front of them and winning the game at the line of scrimmage, getting penetration against our offensive line and stopping our ability to get into the second level with our run game. So I want us to basically force them to have to play us honest so that we can punish them in a way that's going to benefit us later, and we can play complementary football by running it later. So I want that first. Secondly, we didn't get any turnovers against Houston, did we? We came close. We did not get them. We have to turn the ball over, and fortunately, Justin Herbert loves to do so. Get after him, put pressure on him, maybe bring 29 off the edge again, and we'll see if he can knock it loose one more time. I think that we have a lot that we can put schematically up in front of the Chargers to force pressure and force decisions and make them wrong. We have to force them to make those decisions, though. We can't make it easy. We cannot let Keenan Allen, and I'll say his name, operate in the middle of the field with reckless abandon. Like we can't let him basically look like he's wearing red 87 in the middle of a zone and like we forget to cover the guy. They operate in the same areas of the field. So like we have to be able to neutralize him, because I don't trust anybody else on that offense to kill us. And if they do, fine. Props to you, but I don't trust anybody else but number 13 to kill us. And that includes Austin Eckler, who I think is washed at this point.
There's a legitimate chance that Brandon Staley is not coaching this team when we play them the second time.
That's what we were saying earlier.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But unfortunately for the Spanos family, I don't think Jim Harbaugh is going to be an option. So,
you know why? It's because there's a report that came out today that said that they are possibly closing on an extension or having extension talks with. This is the funny part, like the Willy Wonka fine details of, can you please not, put your name in head coaching carousels for the NFL? Could you please not put your name, and that you are basically Michigan born and bred, if you will, from, I guess, once you retire. So there's only one thing I have to say to that is Chargers, what happened? Duh. Right. That's the famous thing. Like, but yeah, so I'm I'm hopeful. Hopefully we can come out with a win. Why don't we kick things off, I guess, with the Broncos and Chargers picks. Jackie, since you are our guest, we'll lead it off with you. I don't like that reaction.
It's tough because the Chargers are going to charger, but we've seen the movie of Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, and Justin Herbert before. And I feel like the Broncos definitely showed, for all the great things the defensive has done the last few weeks, I think they showed some serious cracks last week, specifically being, we can talk about the Singleton play all you want, but like a lack of discipline at times.
Yeah.
Letting Nico Hollins of all people like run all over you and put up the same amount of numbers as your offense as a whole, I think it shows there's still a lot of work to be done and they're still susceptible in a lot of places. It just hadn't popped back up yet. But it's just, Matty made the point of it's almost muscle memory for the Chargers to lose close games. You're Keenan Allen. You're a decade into this. Again, excuse my French, but like you're a decade into this shit.
Yeah.
Like you've been at this for a substantial chunk of your life. Like at what point are you saying, I want to come back next year? I'm not risking anything for this dude that's going to be fired in 3 weeks. Like, right. if even. So, it's hard to look at that Chargers team and think, yeah, they can win a close, meaningful game sometime soon. Like, they're going to rally behind the head coach. It's just, like, you could probably convince me that some of them that are on long-term deals are more comfortable losing because they know it'll get Staley out of there. And I think if you're at a point where you're a team who someone can legitimately say some of your players might prefer to lose so the head coach gets fired, I'm feeling a 3-possession Broncos win.
3-possession.
It's the Chargers. They are the New York Mets of the NFL. And as a Mets fan, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, gone are the days of Noah Syndergaard and Jacob deGrom and Steven Matz.
Yeah, it's sad. I almost feel bad for the Chargers. I don't, not one bit, but almost. So to put some numbers on it, I'll give it 31-14. As Matty pointed out, they love to turn the ball over. They're going to give you every chance at a short field. Who knows? Maybe it's like a Will Lutz 9 field goal day.
Which should be an NFL record. So
someone's going to do it. It's 2023 Will Lutz.
What about you guys, Matty and Brandon? You got a win here?
I think we win. I do think we win. I'm trying to come up with a score prediction though, because
Scoregami score.
I'm not. No,
score predictions are tough.
I'm not as optimistic as Jack. I think this is closer to like it depends on how badly the Chargers charger it, because it could be like 28-25 or 28-21.
Josh says,
what type of chargering?
Josh says, can we just say that if Denver wins 6-0, like after the Chargers won 6-0 against the Patriots, that would actually be hilarious.
If we only put up 6 points on that Chargers defense, just pack it in for the year.
That actually would
get it off. 28-24. I'm going to go with the 28-24.
Okay.
I'm going to go with that, which means that this offense bounces back so much we don't have to kick a field goal. We just scored 4 touchdowns. It could happen. This passing defense of the Chargers is very bad. But it'll be interesting. How do they lose this time? The Chargers.
Yeah. And for the Broncos' sake, hopefully it is the Chargers. Matty?
So bold predictions. Kind of a mixed bag. 23-20 Broncos victory. Javonte Williams gets his first rushing touchdown of the season. But mixed bag in that we're not as effective in the red zone as we'd like to be, so we have to kick all those field goals. But the Broncos win 23-20.
9 field goal day for Will Lutz.
Something just doesn't sound right. You said Javonte Williams doesn't have a rushing touchdown. It doesn't sound.
They only had one going into the Browns game. They'd only had one all year, and it was Russ.
Yeah, it's just I believe it. It's just it's one of those you got to just like.
You want to make it. You want to feel worse about it,
or you just don't want to believe it.
No, I'm about to make you feel worse about it. He hasn't had a rushing touchdown since 2021.
As a backfield, they had more receiving touchdowns going into the Cleveland game than rushing touchdowns.
Yeah, so I'm thinking Broncos. I do think Broncos get off the schneid of what happened against the Houston Texans. And I've been kind of contemplating going Jack's route as far as, a double-digit victory. It would be nice if they could put up over 30 points. It'd be nice if they could put up some, over 30 points. I think it's only been, 2 times this season, right, where the Broncos have put up 30 points. So if they, and they're 1-1 in both those games, of course, the one that shall not be named, where they lost, where it probably should have been a win, but we won't talk about that anymore because, we're under the Chargers. I think that there's a chance the Broncos can put up 30, and I think that there's obviously a chance they can win by double digits. I think just based probably on where things are, I will probably say 24-14. So Broncos on that one. All right, so finishing up on the pick side of things, let's give our predictions, of course, to the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New England Patriots, who are playing right now. We aren't going to cheat, and we're going to say it's the New England Patriots because they're up, 21-18 right now with about 5 minutes left into the fourth quarter or so. So we're not going to say the Patriots, and we're not going to cheat, and unless
Well, the Steelers are about to win. They're going to get a turnover on the Patriots, be right in position, score a touchdown, and the Patriots will be done after that. So it'll probably be, it'll be like 25-21.
But anyway, we had.
You just said don't cheat.
Well,
I'll be honest and say I put money on the Steelers.
So you had Steelers.
I couldn't bring myself to put money on this game.
Oh my god, dude!
Versus Bailey Zappi, man.
I put money on the Iowa-Nebraska under. Easiest decision of my life.
My condolences, first of all.
The under hit. I loved watching that game.
Don't forget that means you're
hold
likely
on.
to get married. Apparently,
Can we?
I see that.
Rewind it. You actually enjoyed watching that game because it made my eyes bleed watching.
Oh yeah,
that game.
As from a pure entertainment standpoint, that game was hysterical. That game sucked. It was so bad it was funny. It kind of reminded me of like those Naked Gun movies with Leslie Nielsen.
dude,
it was just so comedically awful that it was.
You need to say that to Sarah because that's hilarious.
It was like that scene where like OJ's getting hit by everything imaginable, and he gets his leg stuck in some sort of trap, and then he falls over the edge of the railing. That's what those games remind me of.
All right, so we all, Brandon, I'm guessing you had Steelers, right? You had Steelers.
Oh, 100% thought it was the Steelers.
Yeah.
Steelers.
All right, so another really, really great game. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons. Jack, you go first.
Oh, I hate both.
You're chomping at the bit and wanting to pick this game. I can see it.
Has anyone said a tie?
I feel like
I'm confident those teams are going to tie at 12-12.
I feel like in the last 3 weeks, Brandon, Matty, and I whenever we get a game like this where it's Bucks and Falcons or something like that, it's always like Can we just pick a tie?
I'm gonna say they tie at 12 to 12. Field
Which would be
goals only.
crazy. That actually would be crazy. So you're saying tie?
Mhm.
Okay. So we actually officially, as much as we joke about it, Brandon and Matty, we have our first official tie, like on Pick'em. So
If that hits, that's like getting the zeros in roulette, right? Like, you could bet on a tie, can't you?
I think so. I mean, sports betting just went live in Florida, and I have not hit a single one of my parlays yet. I don't see why I can't bet on a tie. Well, yeah. I think I should be able to bet on a tie. That should be like unconstitutional if I can't.
That's true.
I'm gonna
Brandon,
say,
You can't give me sports betting and then say there's no tie. Can I seriously not bet on a tie? Oh, this is bullshit.
it's unconstitutional.
This genuinely feels like, what's the point of betting on sports if I can't bet on a tie? I can bet on the game going to overtime.
Who are you gonna say, Brandon?
I think I'm gonna go with the Bucks. I don't know. I just feel like as long as Desmond Ridder is the Falcons quarterback and Arthur Smith is still their head coach, like I just can't pick them.
I saw
not that the Bucks have been good, but just like other than Mike Evans, because Mike Evans is legit. But I think it's the Bucks.
Matty,
I take the Bucks. Yeah.
you're gonna plant your Baker Mayfield flag like he did at Ohio State.
This game is nowhere near that level.
Okay.
But I will say the Bucks win.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going Bucks too. All right. Now let's talk wild card. The Jake Browning-led Cincinnati Bengals going up against Gardner Minshew and the Indianapolis Colts at 7-5. What do we really want to have happen? I guess so.
You want to have the Bengals.
I guess we'll
win,
see if Browning is legit.
Yeah,
but the Colts are going to win.
I think you want the Bengals out.
I definitely have to root for the Bengals.
And it's at home. It's in Cincinnati.
I mean, like a Jake Browning, like Linsanity type run helps the Broncos.
And he had a great game.
Or I guess in football terms, is that like a Josh Dobbs type run? Nick Foles run? I don't know.
Yeah,
But,
I know, Joey. Yeah, I know.
Does that have to do with a certain lineman that signed with them today?
Yeah, that stinking 5-star who decided to steal the day and announced his commitment to Colorado on Undisputed. Right? Oh, yeah. Love you, Joey.
Colts win this one, right?
I don't know.
It depends on how legit Jake Browning is.
You don't get to
me.
cage it. You just got to.
Oh,
You can't cage it.
you know what? I'm going with my heart on this one. I'm gonna say Cincinnati. I'm gonna say, I'm gonna say that the Bengals and Jake Browning's Linsanity is going to continue against the Indianapolis Colts. They win a close one. They help out those Broncos, and they get a win over the Indianapolis Colts.
I think I'm going to also take the Bengals. I mean, they're not bad. Like that game against the Jaguars was pretty shocking, to be honest.
I think it depends on how well they can start to run the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't run a Joe Burrow offense.
They've been pretty
horrible.
Yeah, all season.
Well, I mean, and you can't ask Jake Browning to run the Joe Burrow offense.
No.
Well, it's really not with what he did last week. You can't bet on him to do exactly what he did last week. That was.
Well, if they can get Mixon going a little bit more, get him 6, 7, 8 more meaningful carries.
Don't let Tyler Boyd throw the ball. That's all I know.
All right. So then the next game that could impact the wild card: Jaguars and Browns.
I
It's so-
believe we want the Jags to win
Mhm.
for our purposes.
Or
Yes.
do- or do
The
we-
Broncos
and-
win and the Browns lost. The Broncos jumped the Browns.
we also have the tiebreaker over the Browns, though. So
Yeah.
just
I'm gonna go with honestly, I do think the Jags win. I want the Jags to win, and I think the Jags are gonna win. I mean, I just can't. As weird as it was to see Joe Flacco come off the couch and look okay,
is Trevor Lawrence even going to play? Like, he wasn't even.
it
in,
depends on the only reason I'm saying the Jags is because of that report that came out that it was okay. It wasn't as bad. If
Yeah.
he can play, I'm still going with the Jags. If he can't play, oh God, who even is their backup quarterback?
CJ Beathard from the
CJ
University of Iowa.
CJ Beathard versus Joe Flacco.
It's
CJ
so
beat hard.
depressing.
I think I still have to take the Jags on principle.
They can give it to ETN 30 times, and
Yeah.
it's so
ETN's banged up
depressing.
too.
It's
So-
depressing to be talking about playoff teams.
So
and you're
so
like,
is the
"All right,
Browns defense.
Joe Flacco and CJ Beathard. Let's do it.
That's right. So,
Feels
wait,
disgraceful to football.
Jaguars? Is that what you're saying?
I'm still picking the Jags. Yeah.
Yeah.
Browns win.
Browns win. Well, and the other thing for me, like that, I'm kind of thinking to myself, I'm like, we'll get to the Texans game here in a little bit too, but it's like, wouldn't you almost also want maybe the Browns to beat the Jaguars just from the simple divisional standpoint too?
I mean, we need the Jags to win to help our playoff chances. So no.
Yeah. I'm gonna say Jags. But just because the offensive pieces are there, obviously, and Cleveland they're just carried by their defense. But that's all they are. So I would say Jaguars. And now the Houston Texans and the New York Jets. The Nathaniel Hackett-led New York Jets.
I mean, it's just Houston.
Can we skip
Like,
this
there's
one?
no analysis here. It's just Houston.
Texans.
CJ Stroud's gonna make
Here,
Zach Wilson look worse than he already does.
can we just say how incredible that story was, though, with the whole New York Jets? How Zach Wilson did not actually want to start, but he was almost bullied, if you will, into starting for the New York Jets this week. That whole situation was just so hilarious to unfold this week. Like how he was basically like, oh, no, I really don't want to start.
He's
And-
Alex Moran.
Yeah, he was Alex Moran.
He's Alex Moran of the NFL.
I saw that episode today. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it's that. If you guys haven't seen Blue Mountain State, it's a college football show that's like very satirical. Alex Moran is a quarterback for that team who is at practice one day and he makes like a great throw, and coach is like, "That a boy, you keep making throws like that, you'll be the starter." And Alex is like,
Nope,
"No
I'm good.
thanks, coach, I'm good." Yeah, it's Houston. It just move on. Unless Matty, you have something else to say about that.
If you pick the Jets, Matty, I swear.
No.
Don't give him a
Houston-
chance to.
Houston's gonna win. I mean, I was thinking about it, but I don't know how the Jets.
I mean,
are
we
gonna
want
score.
them to lose, but I don't think they can.
I don't know how the Jets are going to score, especially with Stingley playing the way he is. Like Garrett Wilson's going to be in hell. It's going to be a whole thing.
The real question is, are the Jets going to score 16 points? That's the real question.
They will not.
No.
Fascinating game here. The Los Angeles Rams and the Ravens. Lamar Jackson, he might play. I would say it's far likely he's going to play, but he also might have maybe the worst immune system I've ever seen for someone like he has another illness again, and he didn't practice. So he might play. I would fair to say that he will play, but Rams and Ravens.
Ravens are the best team in football, in my opinion. So I can't pick against that. I mean, without Lamar, it might be closer.
If Lamar plays, which I think he probably will, I'm taking the Rams or the Ravens.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat.
Odell Beckham catches a touchdown against his former team.
Oh yeah, that Beckham revenge game.
Ravens win.
Revenge game. Joined them super late, got a Super Bowl ring. That
Damn
was
y'all for
Revenge
giving me a
game.
rig.
That's why
Yeah,
I slightly
that.
hesitated when I said revenge game, but technically it's a revenge game.
Has a player ever given a team a tribute video? Because if there will ever be one, it's going to be Odell.
But
Right.
but if there would ever be one, it should have been like if he's playing the New York Giants again, and like he has like the game of his life. So it would be. It would have.
He showed up in LA really late in the season. His best game was the Super Bowl. He won a ring. Well, no, his best. I mean, he blows his knee out in the Super Bowl.
But he lit it up before then.
Yeah, I mean, he was playing a good game, lit it up, got hurt. The rest of the team carried him there. I mean, like, I
Showed up when it mattered.
Yeah, he owes the Rams a thank you a lot more than the Rams owe him a
just
thank
like
you.
DeAndre Jordan
And-
the Nuggets tribute video after last season. Although he made it up to them a little bit this season.
Who else was on that team with him? Von Miller, his best friend.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting storyline there too.
So the Chicago Bears have the opportunity to do the funniest thing.
And they will.
Oh. Is that you calling your shot here?
Hey, I called it last week. I'm calling it this week.
That's true.
Jack-
Last week he picked the Packers to beat the Chiefs.
Yeah, Jack, he is Houdini. He predicted the Packers would beat the Chiefs last week.
I think I took the Packers on the road or at home. Jordan Love was just playing too good.
Jordan Love's figured it out, man. The Packers did it again. They can't keep getting away with this.
Which
I
by
was
ridiculous.
surprised to know it was Mahomes' first game in Lambeau.
the way,
Yeah.
that Broncos
Yeah.
game against the Packers is looking really good right now.
He's now
Just-
0-1 against at Lambeau. Hell yeah.
so
I'm also taking the Bears.
Yeah.
It's just that this is perfect Dan Campbell lay a turret area. The Bears are playing just good enough that they're not getting attention, but it's recognized.
it
And
also
I mean,
subtly could
the
be.
Lions are favorites on the road. Like, this is such a game for them to lose. And if the Packers win, then you're talking about the Packers winning a bunch in a row, beating Mahomes, being back in the division. I mean, Campbell's going to be the fattest turd this weekend. I have zero faith.
I'm still taking Detroit.
This does have the makings, though.
I'm still taking Detroit.
We'll talk about it with the previewing the Lions, but like this has the makings to be a look past the Bears to the Bronco game because of the emotional game, because of the game, that will be, which is the disciple versus the master with Dan Campbell and Sean Payton. So, and we'll be talking, of course, about that. So I'm going Lions though, but you two are going Bears.
The Bears.
I love the idea of Justin Fields playing just good enough that Ryan Poles is like, I don't really need Caleb Williams. Like that's the most Bears shit ever. Like, he's gonna trade down, take a tackle that'll make one Pro Bowl.
Bro should get fired for having that thought alone.
Speaking of a toxic football team,
Can we pass this one?
the Carolina Panthers and the New Orleans Saints.
Pass.
This is my tie. It's a tie game. 3-3.
Pass.
Pass.
Jameis Winston, is he going to start?
I still think it's the Saints, obviously, if you're picking, but I mean, yeah,
Yeah. I'm sorry, Carolina. May the odds ever be in your favor, but yeah, the Saints are going to win.
Vikings and Raiders.
I think this is one where I just default to the home team.
I think the Josh Dobbs insanity run has a mild resurgence.
Yes, sir.
Just mild.
Mild.
There's a certain guy who's coming back this week who's pretty good at football. So Justin Jefferson is
JJ.
making his
Oh
return.
shit, I forgot about that. Yeah, give me the Vikings.
I'm taking the
So,
Vikings.
yeah.
Shit, my bad, guys.
Set your fantasy lineups, by the way.
Unless you're playing against me, don't set
Get
your
him off
fantasy lineups.
IR.
Yeah.
Seahawks, Niners.
Yeah, Seahawks and Niners.
Give me the Niners.
Yeah,
They're
Niners.
they're just a wagon.
Seahawks can't beat the Niners without Russ. So
Seahawks can't win.
I would take the Niners minus the 10.5 even. I think they score more than
I'm
they
in one
win
of
by
those,
more than 11.
I'm in one of those ESPN Pigskin Pick'em leagues, and I have the Niners in the points this weekend. The Seahawks in San Francisco just sounds scary.
Especially with Geno Smith. If it was Russ, you don't
Drew
necessarily
Lock might get like 10 plus passes in this game, just because how ugly it's gonna get.
By the way, can we just say that I said that the 49ers would make a statement against the Philadelphia Eagles? Now, I didn't necessarily expect that kind of statement against the Philadelphia Eagles, but boy, did they make a statement.
Man, that was crazy.
But I got to say, though, I need an NFC championship of the Eagles and 49ers like tomorrow. Like, because it's pretty clear that those are the two best teams in the NFC. So we're all picking 49ers. Now, the Bills and the Chiefs.
this will be an interesting game. My soul so badly wants to pick Buffalo.
Oh, I'll do it.
I'll do it.
Shit.
They are playing better.
It's okay, Jack.
Bills
It's
are.
okay. You can
Chiefs
join
are
me.
only 1.5 favorites.
I just don't know how you really think that Patrick Mahomes is going to drop 2 in a row in the second games at home.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to pick the Bills.
I'll pick the Bills though.
I'm also gonna take the Bills. That receiving core is.
The biggest reason I picked the Bills is like, who the hell's going to catch the ball for the Chiefs other than Travis Kelce?
Rashi
And
Rice.
Rashi Rice, a little bit of Rashi Rice. But who else?
And also a
Maybe
guy
your
named Jarek.
monthly Kadarius Toney play.
A guy named Jerick McKinnon out of the backfield is going to be the X factor in this game. The Chiefs are going to win.
Matty's going Chiefs. All right. So,
For the record, I think that actually helps us somehow.
guys, so we have some breaking news that the Pats just beat the Steelers.
I'm 0 for 1. Let's go.
Oh, yeah. So if we win, 45% chance.
Can't believe I took the under.
Yeah, this was one of those. This was the trap game. This was the trap game of all trap games. You look at it and you're like, this is disgusting. I can't believe this game is happening. But the under was like, what was it like? Over was like 32 points or something.
It was 30.
It was
Dude,
30 points. That's just a free over. I can't.
I
take-
took
you
an
can't take the
adjusted
under.
under at 26.5.
All right.
They saw those two, Bailey Zappi.
Yeah,
I
but
could have seen
that's-
13-10. Yeah, I don't hate
you
it.
could have. You could have. I just feel like it's one of those games. Like it's that game that you
Considering
think
they
there's
won
no way it's
six-
competitive, and it just somehow is. So much
Considering they
more.
lost 6-0 last week,
I mean, you're not
I
wrong.
was-
Like I get it. Yeah.
I was confident the Steelers would win 20-6, and that would be that.
It's also one of those games where you possibly could have easily predicted a scoregami game, which possibly we got with 21.
Yeah, there could have been like a 4-0 win on 2 safeties.
Right.
2 safeties, 4-0. Oh my god.
All
That
right.
would be nuts.
Another really good game of the weekend. The Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys.
That'll be fun. That'll be fun.
Give me the Cowboys.
Give me the Cowboys. Yeah.
I just
The Eagles are
But
just.
do the Eagles lose 2 in a row? That's
Yeah.
the Eagles are
think
the
they
better
do.
team, but this is
Are
the
they?
best. This is the best time to be playing the Eagles, and the worst time to be playing the Cowboys. I mean, if we're talking about peaks and valleys in the season, this is probably the valley, the lowest point for the Eagles, and probably the highest point for the Cowboys. I mean, you've never seen a better string of games for Dak Prescott, And you've never seen, and the Eagles as a legitimate contender with Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts have not been smacked like they were last week. So I just think that the timing of this game could not be happening at a worse time for the Eagles, and it could be happening at a better time for the Cowboys. Give me, I would take, it's a 3.5 point spread. I would take Dallas winning by a touchdown at home.
So you got Dallas, Jack?
Yeah. After all that, give me Dallas.
You spoke all about that. I was like, he's got to do it. He's going to do it.
He did do it.
All right, Matty.
You already said it.
Fly, Eagles, fly, baby.
Or Boomer Sooner, one of the two.
Sure. Except for CDs on the other side. But yeah.
Okay.
Look, this is the Eagles division. This is essentially for the division. There's not a chance that the Eagles drop this one.
I just think I'm gonna say it, and I don't like saying it because it's wow. I think the Eagles are
only one of those is necessary.
I think the Eagles are just slight frauds.
Well, I guess technically too.
Slight frauds. A little bit.
I agree.
Think they're still good, but I don't think they're as good as their record makes them seem.
I think the 49ers just caught them at a really, really good time. But again,
but every Eagles game is the same. They look horrible in the first half. Somehow Jalen Hurts turns it on a little bit in the second half and throws some touchdowns, and they somehow win.
But the reason why the 49ers game was a little bit easy to predict, though, was because if you look at the string of games that the Eagles are playing, they were playing like some of the best teams in football in that stretch. So
they're about to play another one.
And so, they're about to play another one, but I just felt like
the hottest team in football.
Yeah, and so I think the 49ers game was at least a good game to have before this. And so I think the Eagles rebound.
I think this is a horrible 2-game stretch.
Oh, it's a horrible 5-game stretch, but yet they came out looking like a bandit still.
I'm taking Dallas, that's all I know.
I'm going Philly. All right. So to round it out, we get 2 Monday night games.
It's a fucking stupid decision by the NFL. Pardon my French.
We have the
so stupid.
The surging Green Bay Packers, who are possibly going to get to a playoff spot. And as I said earlier, the Broncos' victory over the Packers is looking better by the day. And Packers and Giants and the Dolphins, the 9-3 division leading Miami Dolphins.
I'm going to do a doubleheader pick. Miami, Green Bay.
I'm going to go with Miami and New York. This feels like a trap game for Green Bay. You're coming off this incredible run. Tommy
DeVito is coming in and doing this.
He has played.
He's been okay. I'll give it to him. Better than I expected.
He's been fine. And I think the flip side of that is I think Jordan Love, what the Packers are doing is due for a little bit of regression. And I just feels like a trap game. They have a playoff contender next week in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So,
Matty?
By default, a playoff contender. Oh, and Miami. No chance for Tennessee.
Matty?
Packers and Dolphins. Easy peasy lemon squeezy.
Yeah, it is actually kind of crazy to see, how good the Miami Dolphins really are. You felt like they were going to be a really scary team. That's one of the things that I said with the Dolphins. I didn't necessarily know if they would win the division, but I did say that they would be a really scary team come playoff time, and a team that you really wouldn't want to face just because of that offense. It is almost like the AFC version of the 49ers. It is just it's really scary what Mike McDaniel has been cooking up down there in Miami. And I can't even imagine what the coverage has been like down there in Florida, Shaq, with those Dolphins.
I'm lucky enough that I live in this weird little vacuum of UCF football and Orlando Magic basketball, which both of which are pretty decent.
I'd say
Gator country.
I'd say for this though, the Dolphins are good. # analysis, but The Titans are so bad against the pass. Like, I don't even see a way that they could slot this one into a game that's like within 10 points.
Hill could put up 200. Tyree could put up 200 yards this week.
Easily in the first half.
That's how bad. That's how bad the Titans are in the secondary.
I mean, he had a $150 last week before halftime. So,
All right. Well, we want to say thank you, Jack, for hopping on with us. It was absolutely a pleasure. Obviously, it did go a little bit long, but when you have so much fun that over here at the Manly Broncos podcast,
it's only 11:25 Eastern time.
It's only 11:25, and it's 9:30 here. Yeah, no, but that is the podcast life. But again, thank you so much for hopping on with us, and it's obviously a blast, of course, when we do the Manly Broncos podcast. And so, why don't you tell everybody? What as far as what you do, because the fact that we actually had you and I joked before we actually did this. I said actually, like, not talking about baseball is going to be the hardest part, and we failed at that because you talked about you brought the Mets into this, and of course, once you tell people what you do in terms of the Mets coverage, which is, by the way, people. Like, if you go look at his Twitter bio, like 4/5, if you will, of what is in his Twitter bio is like 4 things Mets, and of course the 5th thing is he writes for Predominantly Orange. So
I have for the last I think this is going to be season number 8. Since I was a sophomore in high school, I've been writing for Metsmerized Online and Mets Minors of the USA Today Sports Channels Network, I guess is I think the official title. But so I'm 8 years into it, been given a lot of great opportunities. I've covered some World Baseball Classic games, some regular season Mets games. I spent a year covering one of their minor league teams just south of where I am in Port St. Lucie. It's hit or miss, baseball off season suck. You don't hear shit about baseball for 5 months. But I love it. It's awesome. For the past, I think, closing in on a year now, I was able to join Predominantly Orange and get some football work under my belt. It's a little tougher out on the East Coast in Orlando. Yeah. Can be a more randomly placed Bronco fan, but I mean, I've been at this for like 7 or 8 years now. It's awesome. It really is an integral part of who I am and what I enjoy to do.
Yeah. And one thing is for sure, you are not alone when you're a Broncos fan, because fellow Predominantly Orange writer Jordan Lopez is down there in Florida. So you're not alone. You're not alone, of course.
I've never met Jordan. I love to mess with Jordan. He is I think, probably the most fun person at Predominantly Orange to mess with. And so true. On that note, I will say you will never see me set foot in Miami.
Which, by the way, anybody that is listening, and Jordan, if you're listening, we do love you, but you are the easiest person to troll when it relates to Jerry Jeudy. Just
dude, the defense could give up a huge yard play, and one of my first thoughts is, how can I make this about Jerry Jeudy? Just to, again, part of my friends, just to fuck with Jordan.
Yeah, just to mess with Jordan. So where can they follow you on social media? Where can they follow you?
They can I edit my name? Throw it on there? I guess not.
Can.
Oh, where?
Anyway, so if you click the what is it, the 3 dots, and it says edit name and headline.
Yeah. So I'll throw it in there, but you can follow my Twitter. That is at Jack W. Ramsey. That is where you will find the body of my work. Again, like a lot of baseball, a lot of football.
75% baseball, I would say.
Yeah, got some Avalanche in there. I'm originally from Connecticut, so a lot of UConn basketball in there. But this time of year, mainly Broncos. You can mute me. Yeah, no pun intended. You can mute me in February, unmute in August, and the Mets stuff will more or less be weeded out. Yeah. Or at least the bulk of it.
Well, hey, again, Jack, we want to say thank you so much for hopping on with us. And hopefully, when the Broncos, in this whole playoff thing, hopefully we can continue to tell ourselves, so you're telling me there's a chance. So you're telling me there's a chance. And maybe, just maybe, when all is said and done and the Broncos do make the playoffs, we can finally say this.
We're there.
We're there.
Oh my God.
Right? That would just be amazing if we could just, once all of it's done, we can just say, we're there. Maybe not exactly in that tonality or, with
Covered
the
in
frozen, covered in ice or covered in frozen boogers, and so hopefully that's not the case. But for Jack, for Brandon and Matty, I just want to say thank you again for hopping on the show, and tune in on our very next show next week when hopefully we'll be talking about another Denver Broncos victory.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast right